You're listening to Fabulously Polite, a podcast without labels, dedicated to human rights, education, art, culture, focusing on the Balkans, Central and Eastern Europe, hosted by the fabulous Costa Karakashan.
And the polite Simeon Todorov.
I'm kind of polite, sometimes polite, but yeah.
When the weather is good enough.
The weather is not a factor, I think. I'm trying to be nice to people. I'm kind of like the male version of... Do you know who Murphy Brown is?
No, who is that?
This is a character played by Candice Bergen. It was one of the most successful TV series in the 90s. You weren't born then.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it started in 1988, 87, something like that. And she was nominated and won in like 5 consecutive years an Emmy Award for Best Lead in a TV series.
Like for this character.
Lead. For this character, yeah. And she was absolutely amazing. And you're probably not familiar with this story, but Dan Quayle, who was you don't know? Okay, so he was the vice president during the Bush administration. Mm-hmm. He accused her of raising a child, being a single mother, and said that she attacked traditional American values. Mm-hmm. And it was a huge scandal, and it was a little bit weird because that was like a character on TV, and he attacked a character on a TV series, so it was kind of like a mess. So I am the male version, that's what I'm going to say. Like, I'm kind of like sometimes in a good mood, sometimes not.
Yeah. Well, this is my lucky day, it seems.
Is it?
We'll see.
We'll see. Absolutely.
Stay with us to find out. So,
absolutely.
How are you actually doing, my dear friend?
Honestly, not so well. I am not having a good summer. I am depressed. I think this is my biggest depression. Even during the pandemic, I wasn't depressed that much.
You're in your depression era.
Something like that. But I'm trying to make it fabulous. I can't make it polite, but I'm trying to make it fabulous. The thing is that when I'm depressed, I eat. So I gained almost 3 kilos in almost a month. About a month, yeah. And now I'm struggling losing the weight. And this is, of course, depressing me even more. I decided not to go out for a month and meet friends because it's always like I drink socially. And I eat unpolitely, very socially, if that makes sense. So I want to limit this until the beginning of October. And also, do we count oral sex as sex?
What? Do we count oral sex as sex? Huh. Very early in the episode. I think so.
Okay, because I think the majority of people I talk to don't consider oral sex as sex. So, if you don't consider oral sex as sex, then I haven't had sex this year. I've been to only one date with a foreigner. I don't want to say where he was from. And it was very strange because when we were making out, he was like, "Your name is like a prayer. You are going to be the best father." And I was like, okay, I came for a blowjob. I didn't came for like a natal chart or whatever that is called. Like the astrology. What is that called? Like they do like a little circle and they check your...
Yeah. You didn't come for the second coming.
There wasn't even a first coming.
Well.
Sure. Well, yeah. Wonderful, wonderful beginning of the episode. How are you?
I'm, I guess the same, but with different circumstances. It's been a really nice summer, but to be honest, I'm not really ready to come back to work. This was maybe the first summer where I gave myself permission to really, really relax and not focus on doing anything creative or productive, and it was a really welcome change. But now coming back to the city and actually having to work is it's really bothering me, and I kind of am trying to find ways to extend this summer holiday to at least a few more weeks. I went to a rooftop pool yesterday, which was nice, but it's been a kind of a more difficult adjustment than usual.
Mm. What makes it so difficult, do you think?
I think when I took the time to actually have a break, I realized how like wired I am to my phone, and this feeling of thinking I'm being productive all the time. And then when you can step back from it, you realize that, it doesn't, like, so much of what preoccupies our day to day life, even if it's work, it's not things that are that relevant. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if we do them or not. So it's been hard to kind of make space for the busy work, because sometimes to get to the stuff that really excites you, you have to do a lot of stuff that is really not sexy. But when you feel like you're not quite sure what it's building up to, I think it's hard to find that motivation back.
I have zero motivation. That's why I asked you. I wanted to find out if you are motivated to do the things, and it's probably laziness or something like it distracted you. But I think right now I am lost. And it's probably a midlife crisis, even though I feel like every day there's a crisis wherever I go. So what's my midlife? I'm only 39, so it's not like midlife. It's like later youth.
Yeah, it's not a quarter, but not a middle.
Yeah, let's go with that. So I think the biggest, like the thing that depresses me the most is that I don't really know what to do next. I don't know what to do with my life. And this is a more serious topic, and I'm sure a lot of gay people, like people who belong in our society, lose themselves in a way, even after they come out and they feel happy, because they feel accepted by the people who actually love them, and they find their chosen families. I think there comes a time when you no longer know what to do next. With me, it's maybe more like career-wise. I also am open now to a relationship, because I wasn't for a very, very long time after like a complete failure, like a string of terrible dating days. My dating era was terrible in the last 5 years. So yeah, how do you motivate yourself?
This is, maybe if you'd asked, let's say, a month earlier, it would be a different answer. But I feel like now it's now I sound like the horoscope. It's quite a turbulent time for everyone. A lot of my friends that I'm talking to have a lot of ups and downs when it comes to their work, their career. It's quite a challenging time, I think, for everyone. Like, even for me, I had a strong few years. Like, I felt like things were working towards some new goals, but then somehow life comes at you, and like, it's kind of like a wave that you didn't see coming, like coming from the side and splashing you. So it's been, very turbulent for me as well. And I think I tend to find motivation in thinking about, like, at the end of the day, you can just sit and wait for things to change, or you can still have some sense of direction, even if the waves are pushing you left to right. As long as you're focused on some goal, you can still have a sense of direction and feel like you're trying to get somewhere, even though it might not be a smooth ride. Or at least that's what I'm telling myself, to make things feel a bit more, to still have some sense of direction, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I've lost complete sense of direction, as you said. Even little things, or even if someone says something, I completely get demotivated. Like, for example, today I met a friend who moved in London like years and years ago, and he's like, you know what, with my boyfriend we're going to the wedding of his like a stepbrother or whatever that is, and his brother is also gay, and they're having this fabulous wedding. And I'm like, here in Eastern Europe we just don't want to get killed. And I'm like, even little
it's
things
a
like
low bar.
it's a, it's a very like the bar is in the ground, like in the dust.
Underground.
Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, we jumped from topic to topic. This is the great thing about this podcast, I think.
It was something quite nice that I saw, that even though we took 2 unplanned weeks off from the podcast, a lot of you were listening this last week, which was really nice to see the numbers, even though we were on a unplanned hiatus. So thank you for listening. And on that note, we have a message from one of our patrons, Dimana, in relation to something that we talked about before, that she would love to read the recipes and the recipe book we mentioned in our previous episodes. We're slowly compiling a collection of food ideas, so who knows, if we release a cookbook, Simo, you'll be one step closer to becoming Anthony.
No, I wish I looked at least 1/4 as good. I mean, I wish I were 1/4 as good looking as he is. But yeah, you know what? My biggest dream is to have a cookbook, and I already have recipes that I've developed. This is why Dimana sent us a message, because we were talking about my latest hobby, which is whenever I read a book and there is food mentioned, I try to find a vegetarian or a vegan version of that food, or I also drink whatever the characters are drinking. For example, it was 2 days ago that I tried a whiskey sour for the first time, and I'm not a whiskey drinker, to be honest, but it's like a little hobby that I do. But yeah, it's a fun thing.
It's like method acting, but method reading and eating.
Oh yeah, I love that. As like a lot of I wanted to be a cook, or as a lot of people in Eastern Europe say, I'm a cooker. But yeah, a lot of Eastern Europeans make that mistake. I recently met a friend in the street, I think I told you, and he was like, Simo, I'm listening to the podcast, you and Costa are like Trixie and Katya. And I'm like, no, we're not. We're not even close to this. It's like a completely different version of things.
We're wearing a lot less makeup.
Like zero makeup, but yeah. It was like, I take it as a compliment. This is something like, I think he enjoys how fun we are. And I think that's why.
We don't even have shirts.
I don't. You at least have a tank top. But yeah. All right. I think it's time to move to the Insta interactions if you don't have anything else to add. All right. So the last time we had our Fuck, Marry, Block segment of the podcast. Your suggestion for the first participant was Finn Whitrock, and 45% of the people voted fuck, 24% marry, and 31% block. For Cheyenne Jackson, 50% marry. They really want this guy.
Husband material.
Absolutely husband material. 26% fuck and 24% block. And then for Cody Furran, this surprised me a lot. 54% block, only 20% marry, and 26% fuck. Which only means that he's mine.
Good for you.
Yeah, he's lovely. But yeah.
Moving on to other lovely news. Our first piece of news this week comes from Elle magazine in Hungary, who in one of their latest covers put a gay couple with 2 dads with their child. The photo is really, really beautiful, and this is a choice by the editorial staff at Elle to kind of defy the government's anti-LGBTQ agenda, and it's a very powerful cover. The magazine said that by doing so, they're declaring their intention to contribute to the acceptance of rainbow families and to start a campaign all over the country for love and all forms of family.
I'm hopeful that with the next elections in Hungary, things will get better for our LGBT plus brothers and sisters there because right now it's not looking good. So yeah, hopefully people go out and vote. This is what I'm going to say.
And it's a great moment of visibility. It's always nice to see media really stand behind the LGBTQ community, especially a type of publication that relies a lot on visibility and advertising. So congrats to Hungary for doing it.
Absolutely fantastic. I'm looking forward to something like this happening in Bulgaria, but I'm doubtful it will be in the next year.
Manifesting,
sure. The next piece of news comes from Bulgaria, where we're from. So the European Court of Human Rights found out that the government of Bulgaria was violating European human rights by failing to legally recognize same-sex couples. So there is a couple, Lilia Babukova and Darina Koilova, who were legally married in the United Kingdom in 2016, but the Bulgarian authorities refused to recognize their marriage. And they tried appealing numerous times in Bulgaria. However, nothing came in fruition. And right now, Bulgaria must recognize same-sex couples' relationships, which is absolutely fantastic. How do you think it will be in the next year? Is there like a legal, what is it, like a duration of this appeal or whatever it is?
Well, I was actually at, there was a little event to celebrate the good news where I saw some of the lawyers working on it and the couple.
Mm-hmm.
And something that came up, their lawyer from LGBTI organization Action or Действие in Bulgaria, their lawyer Denica was saying that now the real action will begin in Bulgaria, where they'll have to see how the Bulgarian law can incorporate this, because it's not really a surprise that the European Court of Human Rights is on the side of the LGBTQ couple, but it really remains to see what the precedent will be for Bulgaria and how our law can incorporate this. As you know, in Bulgaria, the marriage is codified in the constitution as a union between a man and a woman, so it's setting quite an interesting precedent for how to interpret this law, and we'll see how it goes, but it's definitely a huge step towards equality.
Mm-hmm. The thing is that in Bulgaria, even civil unions between a man and a woman aren't recognized, so we'll see how. But the good news is that Bulgaria is obliged to take action. And we'll see. Yeah, great, good news.
Our next two pieces are a bite of culture, and today on our plate have a really interesting multidisciplinary festival called Leap Off Page. This is a festival that I'm really excited to be participating in this year after reading about it last year for its first edition, and it's organized by Elizabeth Kostova Foundation, which is a foundation focused on writing and promoting creative writing for Bulgarian writers, as well as exchange between writers from different countries. And this festival specifically aims to connect literature together with contemporary dance. So different choreographers and dancers are paired with writers from different European countries in order to create some type of hybrid performance incorporating the literary work of the writers and the choreographic work of the dancers. I'm super excited to be one of the choreographers to be joining this. This year it will be in Gabrovo. So from the last days of September until October 6th, we'll be working with our writers, and the final presentation will be on October 6th in the evening in Gabrovo. So If it sounds interesting to you, we'd love for you to join us and come see the performance. As you know, we're big fans of writing and dance together, as we'll mention later again. So, yeah. And then the second bite of culture on our plate is a funny one, because Simo, before we started recording this episode, was asking me if we ever talked about it. And I think we did, but he says we haven't. So it's about the release of my latest dance film called A Real Boy. It's a film that we shot on Super 8mm film as a challenge for a contest where we weren't able to see the footage. Part of the prompt of the contest was to film 3 minutes and 20 seconds of footage and then send composed music separately. So the team of the competition would then develop and scan the film and put the music on top, and this would be your film entry. So it was an application that you didn't know exactly how well you did, and while our film wasn't selected, I submitted it separately to Nowness, which is one of my all-time favorite platforms for film and all different types of contemporary art. And in an amazing moment, Nowness really liked the film and they decided to release it online. It's been on their Instagram and on their website as one of the few pieces of work from Bulgaria, so it's quite a privilege for the whole team. And on their Instagram it has over 90,000 views, which is very, very exciting. If you haven't seen it yet, we're gonna leave a link below in the show notes so you can also watch the film. It's a story about the different layers of self-knowledge and self-doubt that we put on ourselves, and kind of this quest to strip away the layers of artifice towards the goal of becoming who we really are.
That sounds amazing. Our Patreons are also amazing. We would like to say our thank yous to Tony, Dimana, Stella, Borislav, Cvetan, Zurnica, Vasil, Ivaj, Vojnik, who have been supporting us basically for such a long time. They believe in the making of our short movie called They. Expect a lot more information very soon.
Something you don't know, Simo, is that I just finished submitting another application for They for funding. So everyone, patrons and non-patrons, keep your fingers crossed, your toes crossed, and hopefully soon we'll have good news.
Oh yeah, that's exciting. I didn't know that. Of course, I never know anything, so it's totally okay. Even if you told me, I don't remember. So it's like an age thing, I think.
Today our topic is quite an interesting one. We're talking about who has the right to act in queer roles in films. It's been a discussion that we've seen take up a lot of the media attention around films such as Red, White and Royal Blue, Heartstopper, the series, as well as earlier queer works. A lot of even Ryan Murphy's work, like The Boys in the Band, which features a all queer cast. And yeah, it's been a discussion that is always going on in Hollywood about who gets to play these roles and whether they need to specifically go to queer actors. And there's definitely pros and cons to both camps. The people that say that, you know, queer roles should go to queer actors, but of course you can also make the claim that acting as a job always requires you to be put in other people's shoes, and it's important for both queer actors to play straight roles and then also for straight actors to also try and find something relatable in the queer experience. I guess, where do you stand, Simo, before we get into the nitty-gritty of it all?
I personally believe that serial killers should not be played by serial killers on TV. So I think that's my answer. But joking aside, you mentioned The Boys in the Band. The original was from the 70s, and I think at that time, not everyone from the original cast was out because it was an extremely difficult time for gay people and they weren't given any roles. And I think this is where the problem stems from. Because once you were out in Hollywood, it was said, and it is said, that your career is over. So the thing for me is that I don't care if a gay person acts in a movie or portrays a straight character and vice versa. To me, it's important that it's great acting. That's what matters at the end of the day. But I think it's more about visibility and being given the chance. Because, as I said earlier, once you're out, you're not given these chances. And I think it's absolutely stupid. I know that Ellen should not be mentioned because now, like in the last year or more than that, she's kind of like I don't know, she had problems with her TV show. I don't know what it was, like a morning show. Was it the morning show?
No, it's the Ellen DeGeneres show.
Yeah, no, I mean, I mean, like, was it in the morning? That's what I meant. But yeah, but I think what she did in the 90s, coming out, she was on, like, it was extremely brave because she knew what was going to happen to her career. And it did happen for a period of time. It made me extremely angry, and I mean angry, when I heard that Kit Connor was forced into coming out. He was, I think, 18 at the time when he publicly announced that he is bisexual. And I cannot imagine being as successful as he is, because this is like one of the best things that has happened in the last decade, I think, in queer TV and like in like media in general, like TV, music, whatever. Heartstopper is absolutely brilliant, I think. And this kid, because he is a kid, was forced to come out, but no one forces anyone else to come out. Like, you know, with young royals, no one questions the actress's sexuality. Why? Which only means that the fandom is toxic.
Yeah, it's definitely sometimes coming from the fans who I think maybe they're quite attached to the source material and they really wanted to feel representative, so they feel like somehow they're the ones that have the rights to the story and they have a right in saying who gets to play these roles, so they take quite a bit of attention away from the choices of the creative team. And for me, I think it's not as important that the actors in front of the camera are queer, but it's about who behind the camera knows enough to tell these stories. It can be anyone from, you know, the screenwriter to the director to the producer, or even something that on Red, White and Royal Blue, the intimacy coordinator was also queer, and so much of that story is about how these two people navigate their sexual experience, right? And I think it's important that there's enough people and voices in the room that know the experience they're trying to portray. Say if, you know, you're making a film about any type of community, whether it's people from a certain background or a certain country or sexual orientation or gender identity, it's important to have not one person there, but a group of people who can kind of solidify that experience together. And then if you find actors who really understand the nuance of the story or the queerness of the story you're trying to tell, and you have them supported by a team that really has lived this experience, then why not work with actors who might it's an important challenge, I think, even in terms of finding more empathy, to have some of these roles go towards actors that might be straight, which is absolutely fine, but also might be, fan favorites. So if we look at a film like Brokeback Mountain, having those actors in those roles is quite impactful on the audience, I think.
I agree. Also, for example, with Red, White, and Royal Blue, I don't care if Taylor Zakhar Perez and Nicholas Galitzine are part of our community. That was a great, to me, that was great acting. Of course, I would like to become Simeon Galitzine, but I'm not going to attack an actor by accusing him of queer baiting. This is not queer baiting to me. Queer baiting to me is all these fucking influencers who are using us for our money. This is what queer baiting is.
Queer baiting is the guys that have an OnlyFans.
Mm-hmm. Yep, sure. Also, all right. Also, outside of film and TV series, I was never interested whether Alice Oseman, and who wrote Heartstopper, and Casey McQuiston, who wrote Red, White, and Royal Blue, are part of our community. To me, this is not important, because don't get me wrong, it's great if they are, but to me it's more important that these people are inspired by our community, and of course they should be allowed to write about whatever they want to.
And also, if they are able to produce something that's relatable for the community, I think the best marker at the end of the day is the audience itself. So if the audience can relate, then it doesn't really matter what the identity of the creator is.
Yeah, absolutely. So in my not so very humble opinion, because you already know me, I didn't I recently finished reading The Transition Baby, and it was, I think, written by a cis white woman, and she wrote about trans people, and the trans community was extremely upset that this book became so popular. I'll be honest with you, I didn't like the book. I just didn't relate. It was good writing, I think, but just the stories were not that interesting. But I think she should be allowed to write about whatever she wants. Like, whether she is, like, I'm a white Bulgarian, should I not include, for example, I don't know, Palestinians in my work? Like, why not?
I think it's a lot of it has to do with whether you know enough about the experience, because sometimes, like, you can write about anything, but do you have anything of value to add? And then I don't think it's a question of, is she allowed to write, or
all right,
are we allowed to make a film about something? But then, if you choose to write about something that is telling the stories of a whole other community, when that community turns around and criticizes the work, this is something that you have to live with. It's your choice to, as a creator, to tell a story that you might not be the best, or you might not have the background to tell this story. It's very different if you're writing about trans people, but you've never met a trans person, versus you having spent time with trans people and saying, oh, I think I can add something to this conversation with my perspective and my voice.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree with you. I stand corrected to earlier what I said about being allowed to do things like that. What I meant was exactly what you said. So yeah, I completely take your remark.
And sometimes this might be, I think it's a difficult claim to make, but bear with me. I think it's also good to have like people that make bad versions of these stories, because when something that's quite good comes, then you can really see the difference, because this is also with people who are part of the community. Like, we need a lot more queer representation in film and literature to kind of get so much exposure that the stories that are kind of standing out just because they're queer, they become more normalized, so then we can focus on uplifting the good work. Because sometimes you feel like you feel kind of forced to support something just because it's representing your community, but then you don't actually like the work because there's so little work out there. You know, a lot of people felt like that when the film Bros came out, and they said, oh, like, we want to make sure that this gets good enough, like, response, but we don't actually think it's captures the voice of the community. So if we have more work, then the work that's really outstanding can actually stand out.
Mm-hmm. But our community is so colorful, you cannot encompass the whole community in just one movie or a TV series. For example, with Heartstopper, I absolutely love these kids who portray these characters. Mm-hmm. They are fantastic. Like, it's a very Zacharine kind of thing, right? My frozen 40-year-old heart kind of melts when I see them on screen. And it's such a sweet thing because I missed that in my childhood. Like, I missed that in my teenage years, and it's wonderful to see this representation, but it's just a small portion of this. I'm really happy that, for example, Kit Connor got to play this character who is close to what he is in real life, or at least what he said he is, of course. Also, he was brave enough to say that he's bisexual, and we know how our community feels towards bisexual people. Disgusting. Like, the way we treat bisexual people is just terrible. This needs to stop within the community. So yeah, but
absolutely.
Going back to something you said while you were talking, I remembered that during the 90s, of course, Friends, I think some of the producers or maybe writers, they were gay. And they wrote this character of Chandler's father, who is, I think at that time they used the word transvestite. I might be wrong, but it wasn't definitely not transsexual or trans, the term that we use today. And it was a horrible, horrible, horrible character. Like, it was played by a woman who is a fantastic actress. Kathleen, was it Kathleen something? I can check now. But if this happened today, the show would be cancelled. I mean, this is such a huge leap for queer representation on TV. Take Young Royals, for example. They have this Latin character, and he falls in love with the white Swedish prince, and they have this amazing interaction, and the supporting characters are also so well written that it doesn't feel forced. To me, this thing feels real. Like, when it comes to queer, like real life queer princes and princesses, we only have an Indian prince who is out, I think. So life imitates art, but not really.
One of the, for me, the really interesting characters that I've seen on TV is in Twin Peaks. There's a trans character called Denise. She's played by David Duchovny, and it's very funny because the story is that as a FBI agent, he goes undercover presenting as a woman and finds out that the character feels much more comfortable being a woman. So when they come back from one of their missions, they've transitioned and they're now a trans woman. And it's very interesting because it's made like a point of it's done in a very tasteful way, but we see this really strong character come in and kind of demand that they're just as worthy of the other, they're just as worthy of being taken seriously as the other character. She's super powerful and quick-witted. She commands a lot of authority, and yeah, it's a very interesting character. She comes in and she just corrects one of the other characters. She says her name is Denise now, and then it's never questioned or made a point anymore in the series. And this is not a series about the trans experience.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very nice to see a character be incorporated in this way.
So I tried watching, like when I was a child, of course, they showed Twin Peaks in Bulgaria, so it was the early 90s, but my parents didn't really let me see it after the first scenes with Laura Palmer. So I recently started watching it. I think it was like maybe 6 months ago, but I don't really get it. I watched maybe 4 or 5 episodes and I just couldn't connect with it, so I decided not to finish.
There's a really interesting moment in the series where she's talking to one of the other characters who's played by the director, actually David Lynch. And Lynch's character says that when she was criticized by some of the colleagues, he says he told them to fix their hearts or die.
Ooh.
And this is a line that kind of ends the conversation, and also with Lynch being the director but also playing this character, it's a very strong message to the people watching the series as well, that the experience of this trans character isn't something to be questioned.
Sounds fantastic, absolutely. Now I kind of regret that I didn't get to that point.
You can watch them on YouTube.
Maybe, yeah, absolutely.
And this is a great point in our conversation to also ask you how you feel about this discussion and all of the questions that we've kind of raised today. Who do you think gets to play these roles and why? Do you have a preference? Do you feel like someone's experience, or how close does one person's experience need to be in order to portray this story? We'd love to know what you think after listening to the episode.
Yeah, and at the end of our talk about this topic, you all know that I'm kind of weird and now inspired by what happened to Kit Connor. I would like to introduce a new segment in the podcast called I Would Like to Be Friends With. So
okay.
I would like to be friends with Kit Connor. So if you're listening, I'm going to send him this episode. I'm not even joking. So if you're listening, come join us in Bulgaria. We'll go out for a beer. Why not? You know what? The thing is that representation matters, but what matters the most is kindness. And I think within our community, we need to learn how to be kind to one another.
And to everyone else.
Sure.
It is called Fabulously Polite after all.
After all, absolutely wonderful. Not speaking of which, but moving on, our fabulous proposal. It's a book that was released on the 14th of September, and it's called Museum Bumps, A Cheeky Look at Butts in Art. So this
Lovely.
it's absolutely lovely, yeah? It was written by Jack Schroeder and Mark Small, who have a Twitter account, and this was inspired by their work. And it's basically a celebration of classical art, history, and shapely derrieres. So I'm going to purchase this book. It looks really, really fabulous.
Okay, that brings us to today's Fuck, Marry, Block. And because we've been talking so much about artists, This time it will be 3 different types of artists, and feel free to bring all of your own prejudices to this edition. Fuck, Marry, Block, we have writers, actors, and filmmakers.
This is a little bit difficult. I would like to be, you know what? Marry a filmmaker, fuck an actor, and block a writer because I can't deal with that moodiness.
Yeah.
Did I say block? Yeah, I said block.
It's a big problem.
I agree. What about you?
Block an actor. Marry a filmmaker. Fuck a writer.
Ooh, why?
Why not?
Sure. At the end of the episode, we are reminding you kindly that we have a Patreon which supports the making of our Eastern European short movie called They. Thank you to all the supporters.
There's 3 levels of support on our Patreon page that you can access. Simo is giving me a thumbs up. Yes,
I
with
forgot
different
them.
price points and different levels of access. We'd love for you to support the podcast, and just by listening, of course, you're also supporting it. So thank you for being with us as always. We're Costa and Simo, and this is Fabulously Polite.